Interesting fight coming up in our next one. At light heavyweight, we have slow Mike Rodriguez that has made himself known to UFC fans since appearing on Dana White's Contender Series. So far, it's been so-so. 2-3 record with a no contest that was a loss overturned to John Allen. And again, I mean, he had a knockout win over Adam Milstead. You look at his next win. He beat Marcin Prachnio, finished him. And then the losses. He loses the decision to Devin Clark. Probably shouldn't have been matched up with Devin Clark. He lost by TKO to Da Un Jung. I like Da Un Jung's boxing a lot. I think he's a good fighter. And then he lost to Ed Herman by submission in one of the weirdest fights I've ever seen in my entire life. Chris Tognoni. Oh boy.
Can you win and lose a fight at the same time? Like, that is one of those perfect examples of raise both their hands at the end of it. Like, Ed Herman, listen, you get the win, you submitted him. Mike Rodriguez deserved a second round knockout in that fight.
Somebody got their balls kicked into their throat. Or did they? Where were they? Ed Herman's got balls in his stomach. Are they ovaries? All right. I'm looking at this one.
Ed Herman just beats the shit out of both of them.
Danilo Marques is a guy that he's 35 years old. He's 6'6". He's really big for this weight class. And you'll see that when he steps into the cage. I remember previewing his fight against Hadis Ibrahimov back at UFC 253 going, why? Like, why is this guy in the UFC? And it's a bit of a slight. A lot of people were pretty, tough on us in the comments section because, of course, Danilo Marques won. But it's one of the worst fights you're ever going to see in your entire life. It's terrible. They're sluggish. They're sluggish from the time they step into the cage. And for Hadis Ibrahimov, that was probably one of the biggest busts. He's like on that Hassim Thabit type of realm.
I'm glad we decided to take this direction to the video, because let's just lay it out how it is. Hadis Ibrahimov might be the worst fighter to ever fight in the UFC.
Lost to Da Un Jung, lost to Ed Herman, lost to Roman Dolidze, lost to Danilo Marques. Hasn't fought since, but that was the end of 2020.
Don't know if he won a round in his UFC tenure.
If you look at Danilo Marques, though, let's pick out some of the wins. Well, in a second fight, he beat Alex Junius, who was 8-17. Goes along, fights some guys in the regional scene about 5 years ago. Then he beats Alison Jorge, that's 0-3. Then he loses to 6-6 Marcio Tellez. Then he beats 5-9 Junior Lorenzo. Then he loses to Myron Dennis, who's 13-6. That's fair. It was a main event of an LFA show. Beats 0-16 Mark Palomino. Beats 5-4-1 Clayton Caetano. Then takes 2 years off, plus 2.5 years. Then fights Hadis Ibrahimov. It's one of those ones where you go, what? Like, did they make a mistake in the paperwork? How do we end up here?
Okay, stylistically, Danilo Marques should be a tough matchup for Mike Rodriguez.
That's it.
Exactly, that's the problem. Like, you look at his record, you're like, oh, he's got submission wins, he's a decent wrestler. Defensively on the feet, leaves a lot to be desired, to be completely honest. But he does have the foundation, at least, of a decent light heavyweight, kind of heavyweight style grappler. Mike Rodriguez is weird, because okay, in his good performances, he looks good. He is a decent striker. He's got really nice long-range weapons, something we talk about a lot on here, where he's not going to be throwing the traditional just sort of front teep kicks to keep his opponent at bay. He'll throw a very similar shot selection to an Oven St. Preux, for instance, where he loves to throw that left kick to the body. He will load up on his shots a little bit, which he has paid for when he does fight those upper-level strikers, like he did against Da Un Jung. And you can just tell that real good technique tends to beat okay technique. Not a real huge hot take, but when he fought Jung, he just left himself really wide open. Danilo Marques has awful striking defense. He leaves his hands very low and he leaves his head very high. Not a great combination, especially in the light heavyweight division. Not saying Mike Rodriguez is this dynamic striker. He'll be able to find his chin no matter what. But you are fighting a decent power puncher at 205 pounds. This isn't the best matchup for Marques. When you look at his record, yes, he beat Hadis Ibrahimov, but that's his best win by far.
If you look at Danilo Marques in this fight, yeah, it's tricky because could he submit Mike Rodriguez? Sure he could. I mean, Mike Rodriguez is 11-5 with 1 no contest. I think submitting him is entirely possible. And again, if you look at the losses, Ed Herman submitted him, but that was a really weird fight. And he gets knocked out by Da Un Jung. Well, he's a great boxer. And he loses the decision to Devin Clark. Well, that's going to happen. And in the fight against John Allen, that's a really important one. Well, Allen beats him pillar to post and takes him down quite a bit. So John Allen is one of those guys that, like, really high tie stance when he's standing up. Roman Dolidze out-grappled him and out-wrestled him. Yeah, but Roman Dolidze is a great wrestler, and he's a world champion in grappling, so it made a lot of sense. But John Allen was able to kind of draw that out of Mike Rodriguez, where he saw, okay, John Allen's here, Mike Rodriguez is here, Danilo Marques is where? Well, Dolidze's up here. Where's Marques? Because, again, he's 10-2. It's a good record. Not really against the best level of competition. So let's look at the Tapology votes. Give us a little bit of an idea what the fans are thinking. 1,157 total votes, 81% Rodriguez, 81% for him to win by knockout. Then we look at the odds. Slow Mike opened to minus 240. And then they go all over the place. He's now minus 238. So really the line's about where it was, but there's been movement for both guys. For Danilo Marques, open to plus 205. He's now at a plus 190. Average on best fight odds. So, Mike Rodriguez favored by the fans. The odds have Mike Rodriguez so far. But this is still a really weird fight.
It is a weird fight, but again, it comes down to the fact that both guys are quite inconsistent. And for Marques, I do like his grappling. I think if he can get top position on Mike Rodriguez, he definitely impose a lot of his grappling game. It's really weird, though. I don't trust him on the feet at all against Rodriguez, and it's not that I'm this huge Mike Rodriguez stan by any means. He's just got decent power at long range. He is good at finding his way around your guard, too, especially against opponents who sort of hold their hands up and like to outweight their opponent just throwing. Marques, if he does find himself in that position, especially up against the cage, if Marques is the one moving forward, he might be able to secure a takedown. But if Rodriguez is the one moving forward in this fight, he should just be able to unload with combinations. I like his leg kicks, I like his body work, and I do think if he can invest in both those techniques, especially early on, he'll be able to even the playing field as it does progress into that late second, early third round. I like Mike Rodriguez in this fight. Not saying I love Mike Rodriguez's ceiling by any means at 205 pounds, but I do think he'll be able to get it done.
Like, I look at Danilo Marques in the conversation of heavyweight, light heavyweight, grappler types. How many do we see? Nikita Krylov at 205.
Fabrizio Verdum?
Fabrizio Verdum, but Krylov can bring in that striking. He's really unorthodox. He's a weird guy to try and fight.
Verdum might be the GOAT.
Fabrizio Verdum was like Muay Thai champ every now and again, but also his ground game is probably the best in the world at 265 pounds. Or is Danilo Marques more like Robert Drysdale and Tom DeBlas, where we're up here at 265, we are strictly grapplers, and you really have to worry about that. Well, we saw Danilo Marques strike a little bit in the Hadis Ibrahimov fight, but it was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. I mean, it was on the level of Ngannou Lewis. It was right up there. So it was really tough to try and get a gauge. If you feel really confidently about this fight, let us know down in the comments section, because there were definitely people that liked Danilo Marques in the fight against Hadis Ibrahimov. And you were right. I'll take Mike Rodriguez because, again, I like the power. I like the fact that every now and again he'll step in with that lead leg up, like a little bit of a tie stance, but he offers different looks, and he certainly has power. His ground game's not great, and a volume striker could beat him, and a good wrestler can beat him. There's all sorts of ways to beat Mike Rodriguez. I don't know if Danilo Marques can. Sure, his grappling's great, his submission abilities are great, but I have slightly more confidence in Mike Rodriguez. This one stays off my card. Oh, yeah. But Matt, we're both going with Mike Rodriguez out of Massachusetts to get the win. We got a great card coming up and a lot of great fights. Dariush in the rematch against Ferreira. We've got Corey Sandhagen taking on Frankie Edgar in the main event. Overeem against a really tough out in Alexander Volkov. So you're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. As we always say, let's get into it.